share presentation. Can you see the presentation more? Okay, fine. So let me start. I need to announce something, but let me wait for a few more students. Meanwhile, let us start with the presentation, right? Okay. Uh, so in last lecture, we have started with this notation big O, right? These notations are basically called asymptotic notations. To asymptotic means they are limiting functions, right? So there will be a given function. So we want to limit that given function with the help of some easier function, right? So easier function is basically gives the limiting criteria. So it is basically limiting function, simplistic in nature. So it will be easy for us to compare two algorithms if they are simplistic or asymptotic functions are given. So since asymptotic functions are simpler in nature, so it is easy for us to compare two algorithms. That is the overall idea, right? Okay, fine. So we have you seen few examples, right? This is the example where we want to show that 30n plus 8, right? So this is your fn function, and you want to show that this is equal to big of n. So where n is your asymptotic function, right? Okay. So to show it, there are different ways, right? You can start with left hand side. You can start even with right hand side, and come to left hand side, right? So in this example, we are starting with those constants, right? So we want to show that there exist two constants c and n0, such that this 30n plus 8 should be less than equal to c into gn. Gn here is n. So since big O notation gives upper bound, tight upper bound, so less than equal to c into gn. Gn here is n, cn, right? For all n greater than or greater than equal to n0. It depends how we define it, right? We can define it as n greater than equal to n0 or n greater than n0, whatever definition we have fixed. So we will move accordingly, right? So here we are taking greater than, fine, as per our definition, right? So now we may choose some constant, right, c and n0. Then we can show that for these constants, this inequality is correct, right? For example, so we have chosen it carefully, but let us see that we have chosen it randomly, right? We have chosen some 31 as c and n0 as 8, and we are trying to, so assume this n is greater than 8, right? That is what we are showing here by choosing this n0 equal to 8, right? So what does this mean? If c is there, n0 is there, you can say cn is what? 31n, right? C is 31, right? And Cn is 31n. And n we are saying is greater than n0, which is 8. So that we can divide into two parts, right? 30n plus n, right? So that should be greater than this actual value of 8, right? When we put 8 here, because at least n is 8 and should be always greater than 8. So if you put 8, this gives you minimum value. So this function should be always greater than that minimum value, right? And should be always greater than 8, right? Least value of n is 8, right? Fine. So, and this is what this function was, right? So now if this is correct, right? If cn is greater than, right? So now we are reversing thing, right? So we are saying cn is equal to this, and finally we come here, right? So now what we are saying, cn is greater than equal to, right? That is what actually we want to show. Cn should be greater than equal to what? 30n plus 8. So that is what finally we have concluded. Right? So if it is greater than, it is also greater than equal to. Right? It is slightly looser. Fine. If you put 7 here, it becomes greater than equal to. Right? So it depends. Finally, okay. So for this particular function, we have showed is graphically, right? Right? So we have shown here that n is always less than 30n plus 8, this function. Function n, if we draw over this graph, right, where n is increasing here and function value will go here, right? So n values of whatever value of n you are giving, right, it will move actually in this way, correct, to the increase in n. So 30n plus 8 function is here, it is always greater than function n, right? Whatever value of n you will take, correct? Now look at this function. Actually we are more interested in this function, right? 30n plus 8 as compared to n, right? So what we have showed in last slide, we have showed that 30n plus n is less than Cn after all n's greater than 8. That is what actually we want to show. So 30n plus 8. So here we have realized that 30n plus 8 is greater than n, always greater than n, whatever the value of n is. Now what about Cn? We want to compare 30n plus 8 with Cn. Cn is what? Cn was 31n, right? Let us draw this function 31n. So 31n will go in this way. It crosses this 30n plus 8 function somewhere, right? And after this point, this 31n will be always greater than 30n plus 8. It means this function Cn will always be greater than this function after this point. That is what actually we are trying to show. So 31n is not always greater, right? Before this point it is smaller, but after this it is greater. So that is what actually we are trying to capture using big O notation. So big O notation says after some point n0, right, this function Cn will be always greater than actual time function Fn. That is what actually we are trying to capture, right? So for this condition, right, condition is what? N should be greater than n0, right? For this given condition and c equal to 31, this function c into gn will be always greater than fn. That is what big O notation says, right? So that pictorially we are verifying. Fine. So it overall means what? It says that this function is what? It is fn, right? This fn function belongs to big O n. Big O n is asymptotic function, right? N. So this function belongs. Why we are saying this function belongs? Because there are actually more than one functions possible that will map in same set. So it gives basically approximation, right? Order n. So it gives approximation to some function fn. So there may be many such functions fn possible, right? That will map to same approximation function big O of n. Correct? So this is one of them. 30n plus 8 is one of them. For example, it may be, let us say, 25n. There may be a different fn function, right, coming out from different algorithm. That may also map to same big O fn for different c and n0 values. Correct? So there may be many such functions which will actually map to same big O of n. It means big O of n is basically a common approximation function for many such functions, many such fn functions. So this is one of them. So it belongs to fn set, order of n set. Sorry. Correct? Okay. Let's move further. So one student has asked actually one question in last lecture towards the end, right? That we may have different C and N0 for a given function. Yes, true. So there is no unique set of values N0 and C in proving the asymptotic bound, right? Some student may come up with, instead of 31, say 32, and for N0 it may take value, instead of 8 it may say 9. So after 9 also that condition is true. If you change C, maybe you need to change N0. If you change N0, maybe you need to change C, but you may come up with different pair. So every student may come up with different pair. We will try to find out a suitable pair, right? Minimum values, but still students can have different pairs of values, right? To prove same thing. So there is no such unique set of N0 and C. So don't afraid whenever you give N0 and C, but they must be correct, right? So for example, right, I have taken an example here. So prove that this 100n plus 5, this is your fn function, right? This is equal to approximation function order of n square. So you need to show it, you need to prove it. How you prove it? So fn and gn both are given. So we know that according to big O notation, fn should be less than equal to c into n square. Okay, so this is your fn. So we need to prove that this fn should be less than equal to c into n square, right? So to prove it, what we can do is we can make upper bound. So we want to make this function simpler. How we can make this function simpler? What we can do is we can replace this 5 with n. Then basically we can add these two terms, n, but we need to choose now n0. If you are actually replacing this constant with n, it means you are saying that this n should be always greater than equal to 5. We are trying to make this bound, right? So this function should be always greater than equal to. So means if we replacing this 5 constant with n, it must have at least value 5. You can take 6, you can take 7 greater values. That makes this overall function greater than equal to this left hand side function, right? So if you can write this function as this for n greater than equal to 5, these values, it means you are saying that, so you can add actually these two terms, that will give you 101n. So 101n should be less than equal to 100 of n square, since n are positive values, right? So it will be always less than equal to 100 n square. Basically we want actually n square at right hand side, right? So if you can write out, so ultimately what you get is you are saying that 100n plus 5 is less than equal to 101 n square, right? So what is this? You can say this is C. You can take this 101 as C. So you can say it is less than equal to C into n square, right? N square, where C is 101. So for n0 equal to 5 from here and C equal to 101 from here, right? You can say that this is correct. This approximation is correct. So you can write 100n plus 5 is equal to big O of n square, right? So hence proved. So take another example, right? 100n plus 5, right? So here we want, so here you will get, in previous example we get n0 equal to 5, c equal to 10n. So now we are actually computing in different ways so that we will get different n0 and c. We are trying to show that these values are not necessarily unique, right? So here what we are doing, we are trying to show that this value will be less than equal to 5n. This is also correct, right? You can also write this as this. One student can take this as in your computation, right? So but if you say 5n means what will be the value of n0 then? N0 should be greater than equal to 1. So if you will put 1 here, this function will give 100n plus 5. right? So if we increase n, this value will be greater than 5, right? So for n greater than equal to 1, this will be true, this inequality will be true, this function will be always less than equal to this function, right? So now here n0 will be different, right? So now you can add these two, so you will get 105n. It means you are saying 100n plus 5 should be less than equal to 105n, right? Now we need n square, right? So you can say 105n square, it should be less than equal to 105n square, right? So you get actually Cn. Now C here is 105, right? So for n0 equal to 1 and C equal to 105 also actually proves this. So similarly, every student can actually compute this constant differently, right? So there is no unique value, correct? It depends how you have computed. So if you change n, y will be C will be changed, right? If you change C, other factor n0 will be changed, right? Okay. So somehow actually you need to find out such constants, right, that satisfies this asymptotic function, right? You need to find out that pair, correct? Now question is, if fn is big of n square, then is it also order of n cube? Since looking at this function, n cube function is having higher growth rate, right, as compared to n square. So if some function fn gives approximation order of n square, is it also same as order of n cube? What this function says, it says higher. So it says c into n square is greater than u. So it bounds that fn from upper side. And n cube also actually bound that function fn from upper side. So if fn is less than equal to n square, c into n square, it must be less than equal to n cube, c into n cube. So I think this order of growth term is correct. This order of n square, n cube is correct approximation, right? Must be correct. So yes, it is actually is the case, right? Since n cube grows faster than n square and n square is correct approximation for fn, then n cube also actually grows faster than fn. So it must be approximation for fn, right? This is correct. Since n cube is grows faster than n square. So initially when you say fn is order of n square, it means you are saying indirectly that n square, growth of n square function is faster than fn. And n cube function growth is actually greater than n square. So it means ultimately you are saying that n cube growth is faster than fn. That is what actually we are capturing using big O notation, correct? So any higher term, even if you take order of n power 4, that is also having higher growth rate. So fn should be always less than equal to that order n4. So that is also correct. So there are a lot of confusion now, right? So if there are a lot of such possibilities are there, what will we choose? So we will always look forward for the smallest possible gn function as an approximation, right? Loose bound will be there, obviously. If fn function is less than some function, every greater function should always give a upper cap. But we need to choose that lowest possible gn function, right? That is what actually this big O is saying. Big O is tight bound, tight upper bound, means what? Other functions are actually loose functions. So we need to choose that tight bound. So we always have to find the smallest simple function gn for which this condition is true, correct? Now let us come to another notation. Same as big O notation, there is another notation called big omega. Don't say ohm, right? It is big omega here in algebra. So how this big omega is defined? So if you remember, big O notation is defined something called as tight upper bound, right? That was tight upper bound because that maps or that actually captures upper limit to that given function fn, right? This big omega basically gives tight lower bound, right? Big O notation gives tight upper bound to that actual function fn, and big omega gives tight lower bound. Lower means it should be towards 0. It says that actual time should be always greater than equal to. Tight means equal to, right? So greater than equal to some function gn. So basically fn, actual time function, is this, right? And gn function is here. I am saying that actual time function should be always greater than equal to this c into gn function. See here, fn is greater than this and always remain greater than this for any n after n0. After this point n0, this fn function will be always greater than c into gn. So c into gn gives lower bound. It is giving lower bound. It should be better than 0, right? 0 will be looser bound, right? Looser lower bound. 0 is the loose lower bound, right? C into gn will give tight lower bound. It is greater than, actual function fn will be greater than equal to c into gn, right? So that is what actually, in the same way how we have defined that big O notation, you can define this big omega notation as this. So big omega of gn actually says there will be some actual function fn, right? If and only if this is equal to this function fn, if and only if there exist two positive constants c and n0, such that this fn function should be always greater than equal to c into gn, and it must be greater than equal to 0. These are time functions, right? So function should be greater than equal to 0. So it gives, because of this equal to, it is tight lower bound, right? So c into gn should be always less than equal to fn for all greater values of n after n0, right? So you can say that big omega of gn or fn is equal to fn is the set of functions with larger or same order growth as gn. So fn should be always having larger growth rate than fn, right? So this omega or gn will always bound that fn from lower side. It is asymptotic function, means it limiting function. It limits from lower side, and you can say it is asymptotic lower bound, or you can say it is asymptotic tight lower bound. So big omega was asymptotic tight upper bound because of that equal to sign, right? And here it is asymptotic tight lower bound. Somebody can ask, what is actually at philosophical angle, right? Means theoretical angle. What does it mean? So basically, these notations or these approximation functions are actually limiting function, right? They are asymptotic functions, limiting functions. So they limits that given actual time function fn somehow, right? So big O notation says this function should be always less than equal to this bound, right? So gn, right? And go up to 0. So basically big O indirectly saying that actual time function will be always in between 0 to gn, right? It gives that gn and it says that it actual function will be always less than equal to gn and go till 0. In this range, actual function will be in this given range, right? Big omega notation says that it will be always, it will be better than 0, it will be always, actual function will be always greater than this gn. But go up to where? May go up to infinity, upper side, right? So this function, if you remember, if you see it carefully, it will give actually a bigger bound, because at upper side it will go actually till infinity. Range is till infinity, right? At lower side it bounds from function gn. Upper side there is no bound, right? It goes towards infinity. So this bound is much bigger as compared to big O notation, because in big O notation you at least that lower bound is already set as 0. actual time function should be always in between 0 to gn in BIGO notation. Correct? So that will be comparatively tighter bound, and if it is tighter bound, that will be actually give better approximation. If I say that if we reduce that range, right, bounds, that actual time function will be always less than equal to this set, or instead I am saying that actual time function will be in this set. So it is looser bound, right? So looser bound will always give actually more variation, right? हम एक कहते हैं कि पॉइंट नंबर 50, मैं बोल रहा हूँ नंबर 50 is actually in between 0 and 100, right? In another sentence, I am saying that number 50 is in between 40 and 60. So this 40 and 60 gives you better approximation, right? That will give more clarity that actually this actual value will be in this smaller range, right? So if I give that smaller range, that approximation will be better. That is what actually I am trying to say. So in that sense, this notation is not good as compared to BIGO, but there is a notation, right? Okay, so let us move to take some few examples here. So first example says 5n square is equal to omega of n, right? You need to show it. How you can show? So here fn is this. So fn should be always greater than equal to, right? So 5n square is greater than equal to c into n. That is what actually you need to show, right? So there must exist some two positive c and n0 such that this 5n square should be greater than equal to cn. That is what actually you want to show, right? Okay, so how you can show it? We can take this inequality and trying to solve it. How we can solve? You can make this function simpler. You can cut one n from both of the sides over this inequality, right? So you will get c is less than equal to 5n, right? So now if you say c is less than equal to 5n, c is less than equal to 5n, sorry, writing is not very good here. So c is less than 5n. Now you can realize values of c and n, right? So give some value to c. If we give, let us say, value c as 1, then what? N will be also 1, right? For c equal to 1, if we choose c, value of c as 1, then n will be also 1, right? For these two values, this inequality will always hold. It is less than equal to, sorry, right? So c equal to 1, n0 equal also 1. You can choose 2, for example, 2 as c. Then also n0 will be 1. For these two, for c equal to 2 and n0 1. For these two constants also this inequality is correct. So some students can give actually c equal to 2 and n0 equal to 1. Doesn't matter, right? So choose as minimum as possible, right? These constant values, right? So take another example. 100n plus 5 actually is not equal to omega of n square. Show that this function fn is not equal to omega of n square. It will give you more confidence, right? So in this case, again, we need to proceed in same way, right? So what you need to show? You need to show that cn square should be less than equal to 100n plus 5. That is what actually you need to show. If you can show this inequality for some positive constant c and n0, then it means this is true. This equality is correct. But you need to show this is not correct, right? So we will see actually. We will move forward with this inequality and we can then later contradict our assumption. So if this both are same, then this inequality holds. If both are same. If you can write this function as omega of n square, it means what? It means cn square should be less than equal to 100n plus 5. Right? Now move forward, right? What you can do, so this 100n plus 5, right? Take this function. This should be always less than equal to. Why we are looking for less than equal to? So we are here, right? So this function is at greater n. So this is greater than equal to c into n square. So we can create any greater function here. So we are creating a greater function than 100n plus 5, right? Greater than 100n. So this should be less than. So we are moving a greater function. This is greater function, right, than this. So you can put n here. So putting n here means n0 should be 1, right? Because when n equal to 1, it will give you 100n plus 5, so minimum value. And for if you increase n, you will get some higher values. So this should be always less than equal to this, right? So take n here. Now we can add these two, so you will get 105n, right? So this 105n means what? This 105n should be greater than equal to c of n square. That is what you are saying, right? So cn square should be less than equal to 105n. Now solve this. You can cut this n. So you are basically saying that cn is less than equal to 105, right? That is what actually we are trying to capture from here. So from this part, it should be less than equal to 0. So this should be less than equal to 0 means what? Look at carefully, right? It says that n is less than equal to 105 divided by c. You are basically saying that n is less than equal to 105 divided by c. C is what? It is a constant. So ultimately this whole value is a constant, right? It is a constant. So you are saying that n will be less than equal to constant. Is it possible? N will vary. It is number of inputs, right? We are actually looking for large n. So n, this variable n, number of inputs, can't be less than a constant. Constant is fixed. It can be more than that constant, right? It cannot be less than a given constant. It cannot be, right? It is a variable here. So it contradicts, right? So n cannot be less than equal to a constant, right? So it is not possible, correct? So it is a contradiction, right? N cannot be smaller than a constant. It means this function fn is cannot be written as big omega of n square. So these two are not equal. I hope you are getting, right? We take few more examples. So you can, for example, take this example, right? Trying to show it, right? I hope this can be actually, this is true actually. This is also true. This is also true. You can solve it offline, right? And if you are not able to solve it, we will discuss it later, right? Try to prove that these are correct. Okay. Then another notation. Now another notation is theta notation. Maybe you heard of this theta notation, right? What it signifies. So as compared to big O notation, which gives tight upper bound, and big omega that gives tight lower bound, this theta gives tight bound. When we say tight bound, it includes tight lower bound and tight upper bound. So basically, indirectly you are saying that theta notation gives tight lower bound as well as tight upper bound. So it bounds that actual time function fn from both of the sides and tightly. So fn, this function is less than equal to gn and greater than equal to gn. So we'll take two different constants, c1 here and c2 here. Function is same, gn is same, both of the sides, right? Constants are different. You cannot make same constant here, right? And function should be same. Then only you can write that this function is actually theta of gn. So this function gn must be same. So same function will be used, only difference is constant will be different. Then only you can create a change by changing a constant. So fn should be bounded from both of the sides, right? Upper side and lower side with same function but with different constant, and it is tight bound, so equal to, right? Greater than equal to and less than equal to. So equal to, because of this equal to, it is tight bound from both of the sides. So overall, since it is bounded from both sides and tightly bounded from both sides, so you can say theta is asymptotic totally bound. So you don't need to say tight upper and tight lower. You are saying tight bound means from both of the sides, obviously. In big O notation, it is loose from lower side. In big omega, it is loose from upper side. Here, it is tight from both of the sides. Right? So tight bound. Else definition is same. Only difference is now we require three constants, C1, C2 and N0. And after N0, this must be correct. I hope you are getting, right? So remember, it bounds from both of the sides, and tightly means less than equal to. Equal to will come. Greater than equal to from lower side and less than equal to from upper side, right? So I hope you are getting. So now let us take few examples. So show that n square divided by 2 minus n by 2 is equal to theta of n square. So what does it mean? You need to show that this function fn should be less than equal to c2 into n square and greater than equal to c1 into n square. You need to show from both of the sides, right? So basically that is what actually you have to show. So you need to somehow show that this actual function, so there is a issue with this, right? I wrongly said. So here is basically fn. So fn is this. Fn is this, right? So it comes here, and here comes c1 into n square, right? Here comes c2 into n square. So this is incorrect. This is also incorrect, right? You need to show that this function fn, which is n square divided by 2 minus n by 2, it comes in between, right here, and it should be greater than this and less than equal to this. That is what you want to show. So let us look at it, right? Upper bound and lower bound. So let us start with this, right? So you are trying to show, so it is basically lower bound, right? This is lower bound. So what you're trying to say is this. So start with this left hand side, right? N square divided by 2 minus n by 2. Start with here. So you need to find both bounds, right? So let us say you are trying to find upper here, right? So you are a reducing function that is less than equal to, right? So it must be less than equal to half of n square. Is this correct? No. No. So can we show it? So let us look at it, right? So here, if you say this is equal to this n square, this is half n, right? So can you say this is less than equal to half of n square? Can you say? So look at different values of it, right? So if you put this greater value, this is greater function, right? This is smaller function. This is negative part, right? If we truncate that negative part, means it is like this, right? If I am saying a minus b is less than some c, can you say this a is less than c? Means we are truncating this negative part. I hope you agree, right? If we say a minus b is less than c, then a must be less than c. Is this true? Negative part? Nahin, huh? So this is something is wrong here, right? So what you are trying to say here is, so if you truncate this negative part, right, this becomes greater, right? So reverse is true. So if this function is greater than c, then this will also be greater than c, right? So somehow in this way actually we are moving. So we can say that this function is actually greater. So if this minus this is less than equal to c, independently this part will be always less than equal to c. So less than is correct, right? Right? So less than equal to. So this will be actually a greater function as compared to this function, because I have actually reduced some negative component from here. So this function should be less than equal. So this is bigger, right? Half of n square is bigger as compared to this lesser function. Lesser function because there is a negative part here. So if we truncate that negative part, this becomes bigger. So half of n square becomes bigger. So this function is actually less than equal to half of n square. So it bounds this half of n square minus half of n from upper side. So it gives you big O of n with c is equal to 1 by 2. With c equal to 1 by 2. With c equal to, so this is upper bound, we'll take c2, right? So c2 is half. For c equal to half, this function fn is less than equal to c2 into n square. So that is what actually we want to show for big O notation from upper side means, right? Now go to lower side, lower bound. Lower bound says what? This function. Lower bound means you need to show that this function half of n square minus half of n should be greater than equal to c1 into n square. So you need to find out a lower bound, right? So here this function should be greater than equal to half of n square minus half of n into. So we are multiplying actually this negative part with this. Means what? If we multiply with this, actually it makes a smaller negative. It makes a smaller negative part, right? We are reducing this negative part. If we multiply by half of n, it actually makes this negative part actually greater, right? Overall value will be greater of this negative part. And if you look at this complete function becomes much lesser, right? You are basically increasing this negative part, right? Somehow, right? If you increasing this negative part, this overall function becomes smaller, right? So basically you are saying if you multiply this, it will give 1 by 4 of n square. So half of n square minus 1 by 4 of n square gives you 1 by 4 of n square, right? So indirectly what you are trying to say, you are saying, so this is what it is, basically your c1 into n square. So c1 into n square should be less than equal to half of n square. This is what your fn was. This was your fn. So you are saying c1 n square is less than equal to fn. So it means you are actually giving that lower bound, right? You are bounding from lower side, as in big omega. So for c1 equal to 1 by 4, this inequality holds. So it is actually give you lower bound, right? So you can also bound it from lower side using n square, and you can also bound it from upper side using n square, right? It means this inequality is correct. So this approximation is correct. You can bound with c1 into n square from lower side and c2 n square from upper side for two different values of constants, right? c1 and c2, right? So it means it is correct. So you need to show actually both of the things. Now if you compare this function with other two functions, right, approximation functions, big O and big omega, you can see here that in big O notation computations are lesser. You need to only show this upper bound. In big omega you need to only show this lower bound. But in theta, you need to compute actually both of the bounds. Upper bound, you need to also prove that upper bound. You need to also prove that lower bound. Then only you can conclude that it is approximation. So you can write it in theta notation, right? Right. So here, if you compare this theta notation with previous two notations, here you require more computation, right? As compared to big O notation and big omega notation. This is a reason why actually in data structure course we have only taken big O notation. So big O is comparatively, what our discussion says, that big O notation looks actually better than big omega in terms of bound, and it requires lesser computation as compared to theta, right? So it is good idea to use that big O notation instead of theta. Although this theta notation is better than previous two because it bounds that actual function, time function fn from both of the sides. So it gives tighter bound, right? Better approximation as compared to other notation, but require more computation. Although this notation is good, right? Requires little more effort to show it, to find out those constants. Require one more constant to prove, right? To find out. So for simplistic, so if you find out, if you want a good simplistic function, then BIGO will be better for a starting purpose, right? So that this is the reason why actually we have taken that BIGO in initial course. Now you need to work with theta because theta is better. Now you are mature enough, you know how to find out constants and all, you better realize those approximation functions. So always make use of theta instead of BIGO now onwards, right? So always trying to find out theta notations now. Fine. So take another example. Here we want to show that fn function n is not equal to theta of n square. So great. So another type of example where we need to prove that this is not correct. So you cannot actually approximate this n with theta of n square. Means basically you need to show that n, this function fn, is less than equal to c into n square and greater than equal to c1 into n square. Right? So fn is here. Here are your gn functions, right? Correct. So now let us first show this left-hand side inequality. Means cn into n square should be less than equal to n. To show that, I think if you cancel n from both of the sides, right, you will get c1 into n is less than equal to 1. So it means n should be less than equal to 1 upon c1 from here, right, from this part. So if you solve this slightly, if you cancel n out, you will get c1 into n less than equal to 1. Or you are saying n is less than equal to 1 upon c1. Again, I think you can link it with our previous example, right? You are saying that n is less than equal to a constant. N cannot be less than equal to a constant, right? So it contradicts, right? So it never holds. This inequality never holds. So if you cannot bound it from lower side, it is not theta. Maybe you are able to bound it from upper side, but it is not bounded from lower side for any c1, right? So this inequality is not correct. So you cannot say n is equal to theta of n square. You need to just show one, right? Out of these two inequalities, one is this, another one is this, right? Out of these two, if you can show even a single inequality, right, that this is not possible, then actually that bound is not possible. Correct? I think you are getting it. So we'll take a few more examples in next presentation. So it is 8:50, so I will stop it. And since I need actually for the slightly more discussion for your lab next week. So in your lab, assignment will be uploaded till 10 a.m. tomorrow. Right. Now, what you need to do prior to that experiment, I need to brief few things. So in last week, what you have did is, you have taken few algorithms, right? 5 to 6 algorithms, I think. Insertion sort, bubble sort, selection sort, right? And searching algorithms. Linear search, binary search. Fine. So in next week, what you need to do is, you need to realize their computation times. Right? For example, how to find out computation time. So let us move to that algorithm, any algorithm, right? So I am coming out of this. Okay. So let us look at this algorithm. This is insertion sort algorithm, right? If you want to find out, this is what the algorithm is, right? From here to here. This is the algorithm, right? Now, this algorithm, if you implement it any programming language, whatever you're using, Java or Python, code it. You have already coded it in last week, right? Now your work is different. You need to find out actual running time of this algorithm. How you can find out? So you need to search for time functions, right? In Java, there is a time function that I know that will compute time in milliseconds. You can convert into nanoseconds and all, right? So there are few functions that will actually give you the time, right? You can, so how you can normally find out the time? You can start that, you can create an object of that time function. It is very straightforward. You need to just write a single statement that will create a, you can capture that value in a constant, in a variable, right? For example, x1. Take a variable x1 and find out, capture that time. So that function is given, right? So it is there. You need to just search in Google. Don't want to give name of that function. You need to search for it. You have time. So search for that function that will capture the time. It is direct function. So it will capture the time directly, and you can use an assignment operator equal to, you can assign in some variable x1. So x1 is equal to that function that captures the time. So it means your timer is start. So it will actually, the timer will remain going on, right? So towards the end of this for loop, or whenever this program ends, capture that time again in x2. So that basically gives you current time. So initially when you find out the time, it will give you current time. So that you have captured in x1. Then that will give you basically system time, right? So then towards the end, again find out the current time and capture it x2. Assign that value in x2. Then find out the difference between x2 and x1. That will give you the total time taken by that algorithm. Now, I hope idea is clear. You need to find out a time. You need to initiate, find out current time before the start of that algorithm, and you need to find out current time at the end of that algorithm, and find out the difference. That difference will give the total execution time of that algorithm. This is what you need to do, and such examples are available, right? Whatever language you are using, you can find out in Google how to find out time of an algorithm. So you can get those functions. Those functions are available, right, in your environment. You can just directly use them, right? You need to find out what are those. So there are many such functions. You can use any function. In Java it is, in Python you need to search. It must be there, right? Don't afraid. In Java I have used it. So now question is, every such algorithm, sorting or searching algorithm, depends over input, right? Input. So what input we will take? Because whatever input we will take, your time will change, right? So you need to take large input set. Large means your input set must contain at least 1000 elements. 1000 elements, right? Don't compute this time with less than 1000 elements. Correct? That I will state actually in your problem statement. So you need to, what you need to do is, if you are trying to compare bubble sort with insertion sort, so take a common example, right? Create an example, create an array of elements, contains at least 1000 elements. You can take 2000, you can take 3000, right? And first run insertion sort over that inputs array A. Then over same array, find out time of bubble sort or selection sort over same array. Then compare that times, right? So same array, same machine, whatever you are using, right? Same machine over same array, you need to find out time taken by independently all these independent algorithms, right? Now, what about that array? There are different ways to compute that array. So what kind of array you need to take as input? You need to take 3 different kind of arrays, and you need to find these times over all these 3 inputs. First input will be all elements should be in increasing order. Element range you should decide. Elements may repeat. Try that they will not repeat, right? You can start elements from 1 to 1000. You can take element from 1000 to 2000. You can take element from 1000 to 10,000, right? And arrange them in increasing order. So take those elements in increasing order. Same a set of elements, right? Fix those elements and arrange them in increasing order. So first array will be your increasing set of elements. Take another array which is sorted in decreasing order. Same elements but in decreasing order. Take third array and initialize it randomly using some random function, and any random arrangement of those elements, same set of elements, right? Choose that element in first array, right? For example, array A1, then array A2, then array A3. In array A1, choose 1000 elements or more than 1000 elements and put them in increasing order. In array A2, same element, copy same element but put them in decreasing order. You can sort it using any algorithm prior to experiment. Then take third array A3 and put all these elements, arrange them in random order, right? You can create a similar set, you can arrange them randomly. There are different ways. So before starting that experiment, before 10 a.m. tomorrow, right? Or you can take more time, it's up to you, right? Time is not important, you need to actually do it by yourself. That is more important. So there are ways you can use Google how to prepare such sets. Maybe there are different ways actually possible. So create these 3 arrays and put all these sorting algorithms in one program. Idea is you need to run each of the sorting algorithm and each of the searching algorithm over array A1, A2 and A3. Capture those times and write those times in a table finally. You need to give the table, right? So in your document that you have submitted, what you have submitted, you need to write what machine you have taken, what is the configuration of your machine, right? How much elements you have taken in all these arrays. So either take 1000 or 2000 or 1500 or 3500 or 10,000, whatever, but it should be same in all these 3 arrays. If you are taking 2000 elements in array 1, same number of elements will be in array 2, same number of elements will be in array 3, right? So in the document you need to write configuration of your machine, whether it is desktop or laptop, right? Configuration, then how much elements you have taken, right? You need to then find out the table, running times, and write the table. That is what actually you need to show. You need to give, right? Along with it, try to give that arrays, 3 arrays, right? After the table, array A1, this is how the elements are sequenced. Then array A2, then array A3. This is what actually you need to submit. You don't need to submit algorithms. Configuration, number of elements, table, array A1, array A2, array A3. Now, one more thing. Along with the table, you need to give another table where you will write order terms. Insertion sort, in best case we'll take, let us say, order n square. Bubble sort, in worst case we'll take, let us say. So in best case and in worst case, that table format we will provide. You need to just write those order terms. Insertion sort in best case, let us say order n square, so theta of n square. In worst case, order of n square. So those order terms you need to write there, because that actual time that you have computed should be according to those bounds. For example, some algorithm in best case takes n time and in worst case takes n square time. So that difference should be there in those times, right? That you need to realize. If it not comes, fine. You don't need to make them that correspondence in those values. No, whatever is the time, send it to me, right? But it is for you guys, right? You can realize those difference, that difference between best case. So one array should be a best case. For example, if elements are in increasing order, maybe that array will be a best case for that given algorithm, insertion sort or bubble sort. Another array that you have taken, maybe that is average case, or maybe that is worst case for that algorithm. So you need to check it carefully, right? What input should be best, what input should be worst among these three, and what is in average case, and whether it is corresponding to the given, it will actually give the same realization what we are expecting in order terms. Those order terms are actually publicly known. You need to know actually what is the order of n square algorithm, insertion sort algorithm, right? In best case, worst case, and in average case. Similarly, what is order of growth of bubble sort in best case, worst case, and average case, right? Then realize actually these facts in actual time. So I will provide that skeleton of those tables. You need to fill those values and do this experiment by your own. So you have enough time. Take your time. Don't copy, right? Make yourself. So make your habit, right, to work. Doesn't matter whether you are sending it first or last. It will not matter actually, right? Matter is how much learning you have get actually out of towards the end of that lab session. It is up to you, right? If you are late, doesn't matter for me, right? Late not matter. It means how much effort you have given, whether you have actually realized those facts, that is more important. So your information is more important. What knowledge or information you finally get. I am repeating, right? So please don't fight for early or for marks. Please don't, right? Justify your efforts, right? Justify yourself. Learn yourself, right? So I hope you're getting. I will actually write down that problem statement clearly in your document. If it is not clear, you can write me anytime. If you have any question, you can ask. I am leaving from here. So it is doubt session, so you can take your doubts. I am first closing this presentation video. So I'm recording this.